School Board of Education meeting. Can I have a motion to open the meeting, please? Can I get a second? All in favor? At this time, we will be moving into our executive session. The executive session will be convened for the purpose of collective negotiations under the Taylor Law, medical, financial credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment or promotion or demotion or discipline or suspension or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I have a motion to move into exec?
So moved.
Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. We will be back at approximately 7 p.m. for a public session. Good evening, everybody. Tonight is Wednesday, April 6th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Can everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The board has just left our executive session, and we are back in our public session. Thank you for joining us. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as stated, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. Our first order of business will be our recognition of some of our student athletes here this evening. Welcome.
I'd like to invite up Mr. Baker, our athletic director. I know this is always an exciting time for him to share some highlights and look in the rearview mirror from an outstanding winter sports season where he'll walk us through a number of team accolades and individual accolades. We had a great winter season. He's got a lot of students to recognize and highlight some of their achievements. So Mr. Baker, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us here tonight. Before I start, as I say it often, I just want to thank the board and our administrators for the support of our Scholastic Athletic Program. We have a lot of people in the stands here today, and it's nice to see, and there's a lot of accomplishments out there. I know we have a lot of parents, so I'd be remiss to say, if I don't say thank you to all of them as well. They logged a lot of miles driving over, and some of these accolades that you hear from here, we hit all parts of the state with this group in here today. So for all the parents that are here tonight, thank you very much for all of your support along the way here. I have the honor and privilege tonight of lots of different athletes, some from teams, some individuals from their particular sports. But one of the themes that you'll hear from me tonight is the word opportunity. We talk about that a lot throughout the year here in presenting about our interscholastic athletic budget. That I think Hendrick Hudson provides a lot of opportunities for our student athletes, and it's nice to see that through these opportunities that many of them take advantage of them and become very successful and have lifelong memories from what they create from their interscholastic teams. So the first individual that I have is a state qualifier. I'm going to call her up. So come on up, Eleni. Here first. And our coaches with us tonight, so Mr. Duffy, come on up. We can sit there. I teased Eleni before she came in that she had to have a speech after I talked to her. She went, what do I have to say? So you can just stay here and enjoy the moment here. Eleni's a freshman here with us, and she's part of our ski team that travels up to all different mountains, but specifically we go to Thunder Ridge throughout for practicing time. And sectionals were at Hunter Mountain, and you have to qualify for sectionals. You have to have a specific time. Eleni qualified there. She has her two twin sisters in the audience tonight as 8th graders, Georgie and Cotina. They also qualified as well as 8th graders. I'm trying to remember not only did they qualify, but skiing is not an easy sport because you're deemed that your sectional championship is deemed on how many kids qualified and their success at sectionals. And the three of them qualified and then put in Hendrick Hudson. We finished second in the section. We were the runner-up for our girls sectional team. But Eleni, after her opportunity and success at sectionals, she qualified for the New York State tournament, and she earned herself a trip to Gore Mountain after our February break. So she was a New York State qualifier as a 9th grader for the New York State ski competition. So I'd like to present it to the board and congratulate her in front of everybody. I also tease her family that Shopman's also do a very good job of keeping the miles on my car. after our years with Yanni as a diver, and we were up at Hunter Mountain, so it was a pleasure to see them up there. So thank you very much, and congratulations to the Lenny. Our next, I'm going to call up our gymnasts here, so if they can come on up here, we have our gymnasts. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm going track and field first. I have the wrong one. So our track and field athletes. So first, I'm going to call up our Class B champions. We have from our 4x200 and our pole vault champions. So if they're in attendance, if we can bring up Trey, Dave, Ryan, and John. So we have some other individual Section 1 champions from our boys track and field team, also the league champions down at the Armory, another sport that logs a lot of miles. These individuals lead the way. Saturdays and Sundays in the winter, it's not just a 2 or 3 hour meet, right? It's a good 8 to 10 hours, whether it's the Armory in New York City or other places across the state. But at the end of the year, when we had our Class B track and field championships, we had 4 of them here, the 4 of them right here, Trey, Dave, Ryan, and John, were the Section 1 champions in the 4x200 relay, which is not an easy event, but they were your Section 1 champions. And Trey went one step further. He was also the Section 1 pole vault champion as well. So he got a championship. I will say a quick story. I didn't tell this from the Bales yet, but yesterday, a neighboring school district athletic director and buildings and grounds director came to see our facility after we just built it and wanted to see some of the stuff that we had put in there. And they took him into the pole barn where we store a lot of track and field stuff. And the athletic director said, "Those are all pole vaults? Do you guys have that many pole vaulters?" And I said, "Yes, at Evercutson we have a lot of pole vaulters." So it's a sport here that we've taken advantage of, and again, opportunity. And I said I was going to bring him up, and I want a quick little story about the opportunity that somebody took advantage of. Ryan Clark here, standing to my right, he finished up the football season, and at first he was going to wrestle, and a shoulder injury wouldn't have let him wrestle, so he came to us, he said, "Can I go join the track and field team?" He joined the track and field team, took advantage of an opportunity, and now he had these 3 young men with him, and he's a Section 1 champion, so yeah, way to take advantage of that. Congratulations, go on. All right, we have another track and field, if I can bring up Isabella. We have Coach Bailey with us tonight. So again, track and field, with all these events that go on at an indoor track and field event, if you've ever been to one, and they are a joy to see in the Army, there's so many different things going on. Who's pole vaulting, who's long jumping, who's sprinting, who's running a long distance event, and we have race walkers, and Isabella's one of the best. She went coming out of her times throughout the year this year. Isabella qualified for the national competition, and she placed 6th in the Rising Stars national competition at the Army. Okay, so when you come back, John, come on back up. Just like his friend Trey won 2 sectional championships that day with the 4x200 as pole vault, John took home another sectional champion as well. He was not only was on that 4x200 Section 1 championship team, but he was the 300 meter Section 1 champion as well. John, that one I'm going to go through. He has some accolades, and he earned the opportunity to be honored here tonight. Not only did he win that Section 1 championship that day in the 300 meter, but it qualified him for the New York State Championship, which was at Ocean Breeze Complex in Staten Island, which is a brand new track and field complex. It's a beautiful complex that if you have the opportunity to compete there, it's a wonderful time. And I said this to him after that, and I want to say it to everybody, because some of them are here. One of the nicest things about that day at the Ocean Breeze State Complex was that John qualified there, and Coach Bailey said he originally wanted a van to go down for John and the coaches. The van had to change to a bus because of the amount of teammates that wanted to take the trip with him that day to support him. And I thought that was a wonderful testament to this young man and the entire program, how they support one another. And I went down that day too, and seeing all of our track and field athletes there supporting him was really a wonderful thing. Not only did he qualify that day, he placed 15th that day in the state, he also qualified for the national competition in the 200 meter, another event. And he also was a prestigious Con Ed Award winner recently here. So, John, congratulations on your great year. I know you're looking forward to it. Coach Bailey's here tonight, and she's always there supporting them. And she makes sure to tell me when they'll be at the Armory or when they'll be at Ocean Breeze Complex. they're great events to be a part of, and it's nice seeing all the Henry Custom athletes there. Mr. Yeast came in. Mr. Yeast also here. Those track. I apologize, Mr. Yeast. So we have 2 track coaches today. Now, if we can bring up our gymnasts, we have our 3 gymnasts of Section 1 of Hendrick Custom that are part of this. So come on, girls, if you can come up. So again, we talked about opportunity. These 3 young ladies are a part of the gymnastics team that a few years ago we didn't really have here at Hendrick Custom, and the opportunity came our way when we were able to merge the program with some of our neighboring districts and be a part of it. And again, it's not an event that a lot of people may go to, but if you go to a gymnastics meet, there's who's doing the floor routine, who's doing the balance beam, who's doing the vault in this regard, and who's doing the underneath the bars. There's a lot going on. And these 3 young ladies participated from Hendrick Custom. We have our 2 8th graders, Chloe Hasseltine and Maggie Johansson, and then Ella Simonetti, our 11th grader. And not only did they take advantage of the opportunity, but this whole team, they were the Section 1 champions. Our entire gymnastics team were the Section 1 champions. So I congratulate them for our Section 1 champions. I'm going to talk a little bit about Maggie. You can stay with you. So Maggie here, in the middle, after we had our Section 1 championships at the Odyssey Gymnasium in Mayapack, Maggie qualified as an 8th grader for the New York State Championship, and it earned her a trip all the way up to Buffalo. And I just, what I tell kids, just go enjoy that experience. So she went up there after competing as a Section 1 champion as an 8th grader. She was a state qualifier in the balance beam up in Buffalo, New York. So Maggie, congratulations to you. Congratulations to our gymnastics Section 1 champions. Okay, so 2 more teams, 2 more Section 1 teams. So if we can bring up our boys bowlers here. Right, they're making their way up. A lot of these athletes that are here tonight, they're all coming from practice and still in their spring sports. So some of them, I said, just come right from practice and just come and enjoy this moment here. So our bowlers, again, not a sport that maybe a lot of people have gone and seen, and I've told people one of the hidden secrets of Section 1 sports is going to the Section 1 championships in boys and girls bowling. Many of us have been in bowling alleys, but until you've been to a championship event like that, there's standing room only in these events, and there's screaming and yelling for people that are supporting one another for bowlers. If a particular bowler is going for a 300 game, the entire alley will shut down to watch this individual bowl, his or her particular frame. And there's just a lot of support. It's really one of the nicest things. I'm going to go through all of our roster here tonight. I know we don't have 1 or 2 with us tonight, but I'm still going to mention that. We have 2 7th graders that are part of the Section 1 champion, Mathis Lurch and Max Minicino. We have a 10th grader, that's not the only thing I'm going to say. We have Ethan Bromley with us here tonight. If you didn't see yesterday in the Journal News, LoHUD, Ethan was named the LoHUD Boys Bowler of the Year. I'll come back to that one there. So we have Ethan, we have Mark Livinati, 10th grader, Tyler Maranaka, 10th grader, Alberto Nardi, who will be with us tonight as a senior, Alex Mattioli, a senior, and Nish Mystery as a senior. Yesterday in the LoHUD, Nish was named to the 2nd team All Journal News for bowling as well. And a little bit of their accolades and winning. This is your Section 1 championship team, which on the day they were there, I went up there in the morning. We were just finishing our 3rd game. You have to finish 6 games in order to see who the champion is. After the 3rd game, we had a pretty nice lead, and we were talking, and they were doing a really good job supporting one another. We were in 1st place. Nanuet was trailing us by 150 pins, am I right? 100 pins? And Woodlands was trailing us by almost 200, right? Well, Woodlands in the games 4 and 5 ended up taking the lead on us. Took the lead on us, and then these guys rallied in the 6th game and got themselves a Section 1 championship, which nobody can take away from you. So as your Section 1 champions, I would be remiss, unfortunately couldn't be here with us tonight, Coach Eisman, who is now a new dad and is home with his newborn. Along with Ethan and Nish, Coach Eisman was named the LoHUD Coach of the Year for boys bowling. These young men were the Section 1 champions, and I think that they really did enjoy themselves at at the state championship in Syracuse. It was a really nice time up there. So guys, congratulations for you guys. So our boys won the sectional championship on day 2. So our girls, come on up, ladies. Our girls won the Section 1 championship on day 1. So there were 6 of them, and our boys we had 8. So in bowling you bowl 5 and you rotate in however you see fit. But 5 of our 6 girls are here tonight, and I'm going to introduce them, and I'll make sure I recognize the one that's not with us tonight. We have 9th grader Lucy Major. We have 10th grader Rowan Dotson, who's at our girls lacrosse game right now. We have junior Amber Cooper. And we have 3 seniors, Tegan Dotson, Morgan Davis, and Cindy Maranata. Okay, Morgan's not senior, that was my mistake. So when the girls won their Section 1 championship on day 1, because I said day 2 was the boys, again, they bowled 6 games. And these girls were all watching the sports, and they get their sports, and they started realizing, like game 4 or 5, and you may not realize this, but that they had a chance to win the sectional title. And then the excitement came, and when the bowling alley announced that they were the Section 1 champion, they probably had one of the greatest reactions I've seen out of any of our teams that won a championship. And I put it up there, was a picture that Cindy had in the paper that up after us winning it with Roman was one of the greatest pictures that was out there from Andrew Custon. So it was a really wonderful opportunity. They were your Section 1 champs. They also joined the boys, and I would say that they also enjoyed themselves up at the Syracuse State Championship. I mentioned Ethan and Nish were on the low-hud team. Tegan was, take that forward now, Tegan. Yep, she doesn't like things that forward, that's all right. She was named to the 2nd team low-hud all-star team. Amber Cooper was named as one of the honorable mention all-stars for low-hud. And Joe Fleischman, as I mentioned before, was the low-hud coach of the year for the boys. Also was the low-hud coach of the year for the girls team as well. And I have to tell you, I'm going to finish up this team with this story. Again, because we talk about opportunity, but I mentioned I introduced them all last year in 2020 when we did the postseason tournament. Amber was our only sectional qualifier. So Amber went to sectionals as an individual. Last year, she was the lone person. Last year on our girls team, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Morgan was a part of it, and we had one other, right? So there were 3 girls on our bowling team. You need 5 to have a lineup. So as the year was progressing, we did our sign-ups for winter sports. As the year was going along, we're getting closer and closer to day 1. Morgan and Amber were the only 2 that were on there. The other 4 young ladies, one not with us, Rowan, were other sports, were multi-sport athletes for us, took advantage of an opportunity. And they said, no more softball, we'll wait on the softball all-season workouts, we'll wait on the girls lacrosse workouts. And the 4 of them decided to go be on the bowling team. And they were Section 1 champion with that. So, girls, congratulations on a great year. So, on behalf of all of our athletes here today, I want to thank all of you for your accolades. The winter season was, as Mr. Operator said, it was a wonderful year. It went longer than normal. And in athletics, when your season goes longer, that's good. So, congratulations to all of you. I also want to say that all of you did a fine job, continue to represent our community, represent Andrew Custon. So thank you to all of you. Congratulations. I did ask one student, and she's going to say a few words. Sydney, on behalf of all the student athletes here to the board. So, Sydney Maranata.
Hi, I'm Sydney. I'm in 12th grade, so I play field hockey in the fall. I started bowling this year, and then I play softball. And I just wanted to say, congratulations to all of the athletes on their accomplishments in this winter. And not on behalf of just the winter athletes, but all of the athletes, we thank you, the board, for your continuous support and all that you do, not only for us, but for the whole school. I also wanted to say thank you to all the parents for their continuous support and encouragement. and to Mr. Baker for his dedication to our athletics program. It's been a privilege for not only myself, but for all of our athletes to represent us as a school and us as a community. And competing at the state tournament for me, and I'm sure for everyone else, was a tremendous point of pride for all of us. And we just once again, thank you for all that you do to make Kent Athletics so special. Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney. And again, thank you very much to the Board of Education and all administration for all your support. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming in. Can we get a round of applause for the parents, too? Because, you know, thank you so much. It was a great winter season, and we're going to give you guys a few minutes. I'm sure you don't want to stay for the rest of the board meeting. If you'd like to, we would love to have you here. But if you have homework and other things you need to do at home and wish to leave at this point, please feel free. We won't be offended. Okay, we have a much smaller audience now. So next up is our consent agenda. Is there anything anybody would like to pull this evening from our consent agenda?
I'd like to remove fiscal 4.3, please.
Okay, so we're going to pull fiscal 4.3. Anybody else?
And also 4.4 professional personnel.
And 4.4 professional personnel. All right, can I get a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda as stated?
So moved.
Can I get a second? All in favor? Okay. All right, so fiscal 4.3. Lisa, what was your question?
I specifically was hoping to get some greater understanding of the budget transfer for this agenda item. There are quite a few budget transfers happening, and I'm just trying to, I was wondering, Enrique, if you could address what these were all and why they were necessary.
Most or all of these transfers are due to the contract negotiations with the teachers. So we needed to pay them, and in order to do that, we needed to move funding from some accounts to the other ones. So it's mainly because of the increase in their salaries that we had to use money from other accounts to pay them.
Thank you, that's all.
Does anybody else have any questions or discussion on this item? Right, can I get a motion to approve this?
So
Go ahead.
So next year, so in the coming year, we reforecasted, so we shouldn't have as many budget transfers, or do you still expect the same?
No, I don't. Basically next year, unless there is more movement between teachers in the elementary school, we'll see some, but not like this, because I already budgeted the exact amount for each of them.
Okay.
All right, can I get a motion to approve fiscal 4.3? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Professional personnel, section 4.4.
I was just wondering if we could have a little bit more detail on the summer staffing that we saw in, I don't know if this is Margaret or Lisa wanted to take this.
So this staffing is based on the needs of the IEPs for students with disabilities. So if there is loss of instruction and data and regression statements that are presented at CSE meetings, we are required to hold a summer program of 30 days. So the staff that you have seen, that Margaret used, for ESY, is partial staff, it's not all of it. So we have to base it on the IEP, so the student has a 1-to-1, or if they're in an 8-1-2 program, that means you need a teacher and 2 teaching assistants. So for every program, you need the teacher, the assistants, and then whatever the IEP recommends as well for summer.
Do we know where these, are they, do you have a placement for the programs for this summer? Do you know?
Yeah.
The middle school or the high school or in the elementary schools?
If they're an elementary student, they're in Furnace Woods. If they're middle school or high school, they're here in the high school.
Okay.
So I think
I believe also on the agenda are the kinder camp appointments. Again, there's one employee missing that will be on the next agenda, that's the OT. Everyone else was represented on this agenda. You probably also saw some proctoring. That is for the regents at the end of the school year, largely at the high school, but we do administer the living environment and the Algebra 1 regents at the middle school. So they always require extra proctoring as they split up and give kids accommodations, et cetera.
Thank you.
Any questions about the professional 4.4? All right, can I get a motion to approve professional personnel section 4.4, please? Can I get a second? All in favor? Thank you. That brings us to our last item that was removed from the consent agenda, which is a donation. We're always very happy to announce these. The donation is $950 for the Barbara Katzenstein Scholarship Fund, which benefits the Office of Special Education. Thank you very, very much to the donors for the $950 for the Barbara Katzenstein Scholarship Fund. It's to pay for partial summer camp funding for students with significant handicapping conditions. Can I get a motion to approve this donation, please? Can I get a second? All in favor? Thank you very much. And that will bring us to our superintendent's report.
Yes, two updates. I'll provide an update on our transition to the Princeton plan, and then toss it over to Margaret to give an update on pre-K in terms of their outreach and enrollment and parent engagement. In terms of the Princeton plan, the Meet the Principal nights have been scheduled. You'll notice that if you are going to Frank G. Lindsay next year, the Meet the Principal events have been split between incoming kindergarten and existing kindergartners going to first grade, because traditionally we've done kindergarten orientation separately and have scheduled kindergarten orientation separately since that's a big registration opportunity. So the difference with Frank G for Meet the Principal is that you will be able to sign up if you have an incoming K versus an incoming first grader. If you are going to BV or Furnace Woods, so 2, 3, or 4, 5, Donna Tracy and Josh Cohen have scheduled, I think, 5 or 6 different meetings. About half of them, at least 3 of them, are in person. They begin the week after we come back from break. It's important for families to try to attend any of those. They're going to be repeats. The question and answer session probably won't be. But all 3 principals are going to provide baseline information for all parents in terms of drop-off, pickup, lunch, recess, who their staff are, the schedule, specials, all of those things. So if you have specific questions about anything related to where your child will be going to school next year, please make sure you try to attend one of those meetings. As I said, about half of them are virtual and half of them are in person. We have asked for folks who choose to go in person to sign up, and the reason is really for parking and to make sure we have enough space for everybody. At last check last week, I don't think we were even near a quarter of the possible signups. So hopefully after break, we'll have some more people identify or sign up to come to in-person meetings. Our draft transportation schedule for elementary students went out last year. Feels like it. Last week. And certainly there are some families who have questions or want to learn a little bit more about bus stops or bus runs or those sort of things. Please, we encourage everyone to contact the transportation department. They can call 257-5200. They can send emails to either Liz Gillio or Kathy Brennan, or they can go on our website and click on the Just Ask button. There is a drop-down menu for questions pertaining to transportation. We know that some stops are new for children because they will be getting on a bus going to a different state or a different school. And it's important to understand that one of our goals was to have efficient bus rides. And one way to have efficient bus rides without students being on the bus a long time are to not have as many bus stops. And a number of years ago, before my time, I know Enrique was here and maybe Carol, we did a really good job of limiting the number of bus stops to reduce our out-of-pocket costs for transportation. If we want to have efficient bus routes and children not on the bus that long, we have fewer stops because the bus slows down less frequently and stops less frequently. With that said, it's important to underscore that the average ride time for elementary students next year is 16.4 minutes in the morning and the afternoon. The longest bus ride in the morning is 37 minutes, and the longest bus ride in the afternoon is 40 minutes. That is some fantastic work by our transportation department. They have been hand scheduling and driving routes and trying to find ways to speed up bus runs. But we are under 16.5 minutes for our average ride time, and our longest is 37 and 40 minutes. But please, if anyone has any questions, to make sure that they reach out to the transportation folks, because some of the bus stops and some of the routes will be new. To the families who have children in multiple schools, particularly Furnace Woods and either of the other two, we are working to determine if there's an opportunity for children who go to 2 or more schools to get on the bus once at the same time. That could provide to be a big relief to families, but we need to run that model now. Now that we have everyone in our system next year, that we've rolled them over, which is what we communicated, now we can start to address some particular issues that obviously we have heard from families who have said, oh my goodness, I've got to be at the bus stop twice in the morning. We might be able to have opportunities, there may be opportunities present themselves for children who are going to Furnace Woods and another school to get on the bus once. That's a calculation very specific to those children. So that's going to take a little while to go through the system, but that is an option. We did share that with parents that we wanted to try to work with them to make that morning routine a little bit easier. Margaret and I have had conversations with Mother Connection because of licensing and certification issues that Mother Connection had previously communicated. They will be offering before and after school care within the 3 schools for those grade levels. So if you are sending children to Frank G program in the morning and afternoon will be for those children in grades K and 1. We also had a conversation yesterday with the elementary PTA leaders who are going to try to determine what sort of after-school programs they would like to provide.
Sorry.
I'm sorry?
There's a mouse.
Oh, the PTA are looking into after-school programs, and they will be working with their families over the next number of weeks. I believe they have another meeting, a collective meeting for all of their families at the end of April, and they're going to roll out their plan of how children, or how they will have co-presidents or vice presidents in all 3 of the elementary schools. With that, I'll turn it over to Margaret to talk about.
Oh, wait, before we go over to Margaret, does anybody have any questions about the Princeton plan update? Yes. Oh, sorry. You need a mic? You need a mic.
So I am an elementary school parent, and I easily saw an email came through, I clicked, I signed up, but let's say I missed the email. Where,
Signed up for?
I'm sorry, for the principal nights or meet and greets, for whether it's virtual or in person. If somebody missed that email, what's the best and easiest way
It's
to?
all online.
So go to our website.
On our Princeton, we have a dedicated Princeton Plan website that has all of the meeting dates by school.
Mhm.
They have all of the links are there for the virtual and how to sign up for it in person. It's
Okay,
all on our
perfect.
website.
Cool. And then just a question about the transportation, because I know that, some people are struggling with changes and stuff like that. But what we do with trying to be more efficient and reducing stops, have we done that with our middle school and high school routes recently?
Yeah, we do it all the time because every year for high school, for example, and you,
Yes, my kids have a different stop this year.
they have different stops each year because, for example, in the high school, 25% You have 25% new ridership every year, right?
Yeah.
Seniors leave, 8th graders become 9th graders, and it's even more pronounced at the middle school because a third of the ridership changes. 5th graders go into 6th, 8th graders go into a new system. So yes,
each
it's
year we evaluate and
oftentimes.
change.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think that was it. Oh, so while we're doing all the transportation, do we know where we're dropping first on the FGL BV buses? Do we know which school these buses are going to
Yeah,
first?
it's a split based on their route. So some of the routes
Oh.
will go, some of the routes come through the southern part of town. They may end up dropping off at Frank G first and then BV.
Right.
Some of the routes, if you're picking up in the northern part of town or in Peekskill, they may go to BV first, or if they're coming from the Furnace Woods area, they'll sneak down Maple Avenue and get to BV that way. So it's split.
That's
I don't know if it's an even 50-50, but I know Liz tried to split it just so that there wasn't a holdup in either school.
Got it.
And you reminded me of a point. Back to transportation, the average ride times, the longest times. We have to, by law, account for every child taking the bus. So if parents choose to drive, and we know many will, those ride times will go down because we'll have fewer children to pick up. What we can't do is we can't have families refuse transportation and not have a bus stop for those children. So it's really hit and miss. That's why sometimes if you're at the high school, for example, before school starts, you see empty buses because every child in high school has to have a seat on the bus in case they get on the bus. We know that a lot of families at the elementary level drive their children to school, probably even more will next year just to get into the routine. So those ride times are the absolute maximum with the assumption every child, all 946 elementary students will be on the bus every day.
Got it. Okay. And sorry, if this is not the right section for it, but you know how at FGL, there's a window for drop off. Children are usually arriving between 8:35 and 9 o'clock or 8:55. That sort of sounds like what will be happening at BV and FGL. So kids can be dropped off, the buses come, there's that free time in the morning.
Absolutely.
Before, okay.
Yep.
So it's
and that
similar.
was one of the concerns is that I heard from a parent who said my child gets picked up at 8:05, and I'm assuming my child's on the bus for 55 minutes because school starts at 9 o'clock. We said, no, your child actually gets dropped off at Frank G, their school, soon, and their bus ride, or first, their bus ride was like 18 minutes for that reason. So we have a rolling drop off and opportunities for kids to do some things in the morning. So there'll be a drop off at Frank G, BV, vice versa.
Got it. Thank you.
And will any of the virtual meetings be recorded? Is that possible in case parents can't make any of them? Should they reach out to their individual principal?
Yeah, I don't see a reason why we can't record them
Yeah, I just wondering if they should.
and archive them.
Yeah, if we could maybe.
Yeah, as I said earlier, the idea is that there's a standard sort of intro to the meeting so that all of the same information goes out to everyone, every meeting, virtually or in person, and then obviously the Q&A will depend on what the interests are.
And then are you going to continue to update the FAQs? I'm sure there's going to get some.
Oh yeah, there'll be some school-specific ones. For example, a parent already reached out to Cindy Kramer to talk about the first day of school and how to volunteer, and Cindy said, that's great, but we're not there yet. But as those sort of questions become uncovered, what we'll probably do is we'll probably drive that FAQ to be school-specific rather than just a K-5 district document.
Okay, nice, thank you.
Yeah, Jen, you asked my question. I was going to ask about FAQs being school-specific.
Yeah,
after
because
the
there's 6
principal.
meetings, I just get nervous that
Yeah.
they're going to be different.
All right, Margaret, thank you.
So pre-K update. So Dr. Kramer and I have hosted 2 virtual calls, one this morning and one last week. We had about 20 people in total across the 2 meetings. It was a lovely conversation both times. The group we met with this morning obviously had already received information in the mail, so packets went home last Friday morning. That included a letter with an overview of the program, an FAQ, and then the form for the UPK lottery. That information is also posted on our website and posted in Spanish and English. If you go on the website right now, you'll see a huge colorful icon for pre-K. If you click on that lovely logo, it takes you right to the landing page where all the information exists. We have had quite a few parents drop off applications. I think I'm up to about 10 in my folder, and a lot of people have been replying online. So we have a dedicated email, pre-k@schools.org. It is in the letter to the parents, it's on the form, it's on the website, and quite a few parents have been emailing me their application. I didn't count as of the end of today how many are on there right now, but we are looking forward to the process. The applications are due by April 22nd, and the lottery will be drawn by a random computer-generated or generator, I guess, on May 4th. We will assign a number to all of the folks that applied, even those that go beyond the 34 seats that we right now have. And that is because we never know when the family will change their mind. I know who the 35th, 36th, et cetera, parent is. Also, if we're lucky and the legislature puts more money into this proposal, we may have an opportunity for expanded seats, which would go to the community collaborator that raises their hand for that. That process has not yet begun. And I would want to know who the next folks are numerically. Everyone that sent an application will be informed of what their number is after the lottery is drawn. The 34 families will then be asked to complete the district registration process, because that was a question today. We opted not to have families fill out all of that paperwork until we knew who exactly was part of the program, and then once that happens, we'll walk them through all of the paperwork involved in getting their student rightfully registered. We had some great questions. It was a good conversation. They're curious about many things. They were very happy to hear a lot of the things that Cindy and I and the teachers are planning. We do know who the teachers are, and there will be a teacher and a teaching assistant in each classroom. That's not only our choice, because we staff kindergarten that way, but it is also regulation. So obviously those classrooms are at Frank G. We are getting together after the break to look at curriculum and make a choice about what curriculum we will be following. I think there are pre-K standards in New York State, so we will absolutely choose something that aligns to the standards. And then Cindy and I will look at what can we offer them in terms of building specials. We do want to emphasize art because it is a fine motor opportunity for kids, and that's something we always focus on with the little guys. And then gross motor, so getting them outside. We had the pleasure, Jen Lefevre and I had the pleasure of visiting Sunset Nursery School last week to look for space for kinder camp, and Melissa was generous to show us her outdoor classroom, so we were all excited about that. I used to be principal in a building that had outdoor classrooms, so that was a lot of fun. So we're moving right along. We're excited about what we're about to take on. The teachers are thrilled. We haven't yet assigned teaching assistants district-wide, but many folks have indicated a desire to be part of that program. And we'll see. We have, I think, 2 more phone calls with pre-K parents set up. And hopefully we will have a fully subscribed program. So. Go ahead.
So as a twin mom, I'm just curious, in the lottery, how are twins or going to be treated? So if I have you have one twin that gets a seat, how does the other twin get treated?
I would think that we would have to give both twins the seat. I'm a mom of twins, so
you
I
are?
understand that.
Okay.
Yes. And we do have twins in the district that have already reached out to us. So I know that, if, again, as we mentioned with parents this morning, the drawback to pre-K right now is that if you are a parent who needs wraparound services. So I was a commuting parent. I made the 7:40 train out of Peekskill. I couldn't wait to get my kid to school at 9:15. So I had to have before school care, and I had to have after school care. So there may be parents for whom the opportunity for district pre-K just doesn't work with their family needs. So, that's something we have to consider. And I know there were a few families that reached out to me. I'm pretty sure the family that had twins that was asking that exact set of questions. So we'll see. But yes, if there's 2,
Okay.
they come as a package.
My other question is, you just mentioned locations for kinder camp. Do you have anything else that you can share about kinder camp for this coming summer?
As you saw, we already chose the staff, so it's a well-developed program that runs from year to year. That we have the curriculum in place, the materials in place. We did go visit Sunset. We have another location that we have looked at in the past. I have reached out to that director to see if that facility is available, and we'll talk to them. There will be a cost at both sites because we are clearly renting their space. I know Sunset talked to us about materials, and I believe when we looked at the other preschool last time, it was the same thing. You can use what we have, and they'll, bill you some average cost for not having to take all of the material out of BV and bring it to the site. I hope we know by the time we come back which particular location we can target. Kids will be picked up and bused as they were to BV, so there's busing attached to that program. And then we will be able to identify students after we complete the kindergarten screening in the month of May.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Is it certain? Is it certain that we won't be housing it? That we will be?
Yes. We won't be able to house it at BV.
And it's because we don't have any classrooms available.
It's because every classroom will be undergoing packing, moving, cleaning, and then moving somebody new in, who then has to come in and unpack.
And kinder camp happens at the end of August?
August 1st through the 18th this year, and we don't run on Fridays, and that's tradition.
Okay. And there's no place at FGL?
No.
One more question. Sorry, I'm off again. Each UPK classroom gets a TA. In the K and 1 grades, each classroom still has a TA, or has that changed?
So kindergarten has always had a full-time teaching assistant. It has been practiced that the first grade has half-day teaching assistant, and they work that out. I don't know, at each school, I would guess that it's worked out to be their literacy block, but I couldn't, promise you that that's the way it's staffed. But it is half-time in grade 1 and full-time in K.
Thank you.
Yep.
Margaret, can you talk a little bit about how the pre-K teachers are chosen?
So just like every other staffing position, vacancy if you will, we have to post. And teachers apply for that position. When the posting closed, we looked at who applied, and this was Cindy Kramer and I sat together and decided we did have more teachers apply than the 2 positions, and after carefully considering their background and experiences with pre-K, we made the selection.
So those teachers will be leaving their spots, and then what happens to those spots? Does it get listed again for our internal teachers to choose?
Yeah, kindergarten was one of the grades where we were cutting sections. So whatever we have this year, we didn't need as many next year. And because I knew that we were talking about the potential of offering pre-K, I had asked HHEA if we could just put a pause on the movement in kindergarten until a decision was made. So if we had decided not to offer pre-K, we would have had to relocate several teachers to other grade levels, which would have meant that the 2 new people who are already in a position now would probably have then been put on a preferred eligibility list and would not have had a position in September. So the opportunity to offer pre-K let me offset that by offering the 2 positions.
Okay, so our budget numbers haven't changed?
No, what we said, that it would be 2 new teachers, those are the 2 new teachers, it's just those are not the 2 new teachers that moved into pre-K, but they are in the program, and that's the amount that we expressed in the detail that was shared.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions before we move along? All right, thank you very much for the update. That brings us to our presentation and discussion, and we have some people who've been waiting very patiently on their Zoom cameras for our strategic plan update. Education Elements will be kicking off the update, and then some of our planning team members will be joining us to talk about their different planning team pillars.
I have an awful habit of, when I introduce presenters, I end up almost presenting for them. So I'm going to be very, very quiet here, but we're excited to have our education elements team here. They are all over the country, from outside of Baltimore to Nashville and North Carolina, and our staff members who are going to present from their experiences as recently as Friday, as we rolled up our sleeves and got into building some of the strategies to achieve outcomes in our pillars. So with that, I will turn it over. I think I'm going to turn it over to Dana, who will welcome everyone and tell us what we'll be speaking about here for our strategic plan update. So welcome, Dana.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. May I share my screen, or will oh, there we go. Got it right there. Hello, my name is Dana. If you're interested and you'd like to take a look at these slides that we're presenting on, there's a link that you can type in, bit.ly/HHBOE46. So if you'd like to take a look at these slides, but with that, next slide, please. One more. Going to go and make some quick introductions. As Superintendent Hawkrider said, our organization, Education Elements, is all over the country. My name is Dana Britt, and I'm representing the team tonight, and I'm calling in from Pasadena, Maryland, which is in between Baltimore and Annapolis. Next slide. I'm really thrilled to be able to introduce 3 of our planning and steering team members who are going to share updates in their 3 areas. So I'll first pass it over to Anthony to share a little bit about his connection to the district.
Good evening, Dana. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this presentation. My name is Anthony Giovinazzi. I'm one of the high school assistant principals who's on the steering team, who's actually also on one of the planning teams that is in charge of the pillar of student engagement. So would you like me to kind of go over the work we've done so far?
We'll get there. I like your spirit. Let's pass it over to Christina.
Hi, my name is Christina Fiel. I'm a transition specialist, special educator in the district, and I'm going to be talking to you guys today about real life experiences.
And last but certainly not least, Anne. Anne, are you able to unmute and hear us?
There, you got me?
We can hear you. We can't see you yet. Oh, there you are. Good evening,
All right.
Anne. It's great to see you.
Hi, I'm Ann Wilkins Leach. I'm a new community member. I live in Verplank. I'm also a family member. I have 2 children, a daughter and a son, who live here, and 6 grandchildren who are part of the Henha district. So this is very near and dear to me, and I thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this.
We did have a 4th presenter for our 4th pillar, Rhiannon Parsonic, but she had a family conflict that came up. So I'm going to be sharing updates on her behalf. Next slide, please. So just quickly, what we are hoping to achieve in this time is to give you an update on some of what we've accomplished so far and what we are going to be accomplishing next. And our 3 team members, as Superintendent Hawkrider mentioned, they just met this past Friday to start to brainstorm, start to bring things to life, and they're going to share a little bit more of their ideas and how they're going to continue to get the community's input as well on those ideas. Next. And we wanted to share, if you weren't familiar, the 3 teams that we have and some of the names that are associated with those teams. So we have one small team, the project team, that Superintendent Hawkrider, a few of the trustees and other district staff sit on. And this team is really managing the logistics and the flow of the overall process. We have a steering team that's made up of family members, community members, staff, and they have so far been the majority of the process and engaging the community and bringing us to this point. But just as of last week, we kicked off with our planning teams, our larger groups, who are each focusing on the 4 pillars that we're going to share more with you tonight. So those are the 3 main teams. We also have another team of folks called the advisors, and they are reviewing materials and helping us think through and giving us feedback. And they're going to really kick in their gear into high gear once we get more of the details down on paper. Next. So now I wanted to do a quick overview of a little bit of the process so far. So you can go to the next slide. This shows the timeline of what we've accomplished so far and where we are. It's hard to believe that we kicked off this work in October and that we are all the way to the far right now in April in the planning team sessions. And we are getting really close to being able to get things down on paper, start the graphic design, and to ultimately present the plan. Our target, I believe, is in June to be able to present out to the community. Next. Now we're going to share a little bit more about what goes into a strategic plan, what you're going to see and hear about from our community members tonight. Next. This graphic, and if you could click a couple of times, there's a few other things that will pop up for you. There you go. This graphic shows the different pieces that are a part of what we call the house of the strategic plan, from the mission, the vision, beliefs, focus areas, all the way down to objectives, key performance indicators, projects, all of the nitty-gritty of the plan. We have been focusing on the top part so far, but now that we're getting towards the end of our planning process, we're getting down into the details of those objectives, those initiatives, and getting to further define what impact that we hope to see. So next, you can go to more, perfect. So just to share with you our draft, V1 draft so far of the mission and vision, which is really the direction that will hold us for the next 5 years. Our mission being to challenge our students and staff to reach their full potential intellectually, socially, and emotionally by developing their passions and their resilience. And the vision is to cultivate civic-minded and responsible lifelong learners in our community. And this came about through the hard work of the steering committee, but also through all of the hundreds of one-on-one interviews and focus groups and the thousands of survey responses that we received. The things that we heard were the most important to make sure that we prioritize. And what we do with that once we have a mission and vision is, if you can go to the next slide, we start to think about, if we are going to achieve that mission and vision, what areas do we need to focus on? What do we need to explore more? What questions do we need to ask ourselves? And what do we need to prioritize and start to create initiative towards? So if you can go 2 more slides, we want to share with you the, one more back, thank you. Share the what we've come up with for our focus areas. We found that they coalesced around 2 main themes. The first theme being that our Hendrick Hudson community wants to see our learners to be more well-rounded. And the way that we would do that is to focus on student engagement and on real-world experiences. And then the second theme that came out of all of our stakeholder engagement and analysis was this idea of building more community cohesion, and in particular with community cohesion, thinking about how we could create more clear and targeted communications, and thinking about how we could involve the community and the students and the staff in more shared decision-making processes. And that's where I'm excited to be able to turn it over to our presenters to share. We'll start with Anthony for the student engagement pillar. And Anthony's our presenters, we've asked them to, there's so many things they could talk about, but in particular, on slide 18, we're interested in hearing why this focus area is relevant to our community. How does this focus area promote diversity, equity, inclusion? Because that is also one of our goals. And what initial ideas does your team have to bring this focus area to life? So if you could advance 2 more slides, we'll start with Anthony in the student engagement pillar.
Thank you, Dana. So our planning team was charged with looking at student engagement. And our team is a pretty good cross-section of the district. We have teachers on our team. We have parents. We have a Board of Education representative. We have a school psychologist, PTA and PTSA members, as well as myself as a building administrator. So we do have a really good, diverse cross-section of the district community. What we looked at first before we defined why this work mattered to us is we looked at some of the feedback that you were talking about earlier about what our stakeholders are looking for. And some of the keywords that stuck out to us was making sure students have a greater sense of agency, making sure they have a choice in their learning experience, making sure they have more enrichment so they're more well-rounded, and to continue to look at our course offerings and take a more well-rounded approach to the holistic child, looking at the child as a whole. So we felt it was important because we feel that it's important for our students at an early age as possible to find their individual voices, and for us as a district to provide them with opportunities to become independent learners so that students can identify both their strengths and weaknesses. We want them to be guided yet self-directed learners. We want to keep them motivated. We want them to be excited about their journey. And we really want them to take ownership for what their academic experience and what their program likes moving through, the elementary grades through the high school post-secondary transitions. We felt that student engagement really connects to diversity, equity, and inclusion, because once you understand, students' backgrounds and strengths and weaknesses, we can tailor and we can personalize student learning experiences. And if we can give students opportunities and provide them what they need at every level, then it naturally leads to inclusion, the diversity, and the equity. So we felt that was important. We went through a lot of different things. I'm kind of just giving you like the real quick highlights of the work that we did. A couple of the ideas that we had, we took a look at academic engagement. And again, we wanted to focus on differentiated learning for every grade level, K through 6 and K through 8, by making sure we have better placement options and by looking at grades 9 through 12 to continue to enhance educational opportunities and options as well. Our philosophy was to hit all students on the bell curve by providing enrichment and support opportunities for all students. We want to be collaborative, engage families, provide support, and provide families with current information on academic programs and opportunities that are available to their students. So that was the academic engagement piece. The social emotional engagement piece, we looked at how we can develop extensive courses, plus reuse, revisit, and create opportunities for student choice for not only courses, but for extracurricular activities, clubs, arts, sports, after school options for kids K through 12. And again, we want to create an atmosphere of collaboration to empower staff, students, and families to explore a well-rounded experience for their students. We started to talk a little bit about developing strengths and weaknesses. I think that's going to be our next conversation on how we can have students identify what their strengths and weaknesses are so they have a better opportunity to allow for goal setting and move forward. So that's a real quick summary of the work that we did.
Thank you, Anthony. So our next pillar is for real world experiences, which I believe is Christina.
Thank you. So similar to like Anthony had mentioned, and I apologize for my voice, it's on its way back. When we met on Friday, we went and looked at the information that we got from the stakeholders in our document. So it really talked about creating a well-rounded student and making sure that students had many paths. And I feel like that was a theme in our whole session. We kept bringing it back to multiple pathways. So when we talked about why it's important, it was really hard to come up with sort of just one phrase. So instead, we really spent some time talking about the different aspects. So we talked about how real life experience extends the educational experience itself, meaning that all people learn differently, and real world experiences can really impact how we learn and how our students show their learning. Sorry. Again, multiple pathways to success. Not all learners learn the same. So having these real world experiences allows all of our learners to show what was, I'm going to take it back for a second. When I think about our group, we had a nice representation from parents and other individuals in the community, and a member on the board, and myself from kindergarten all the way through high school. So it's nice to talk about real life experiences through the entire educational lifespan. So when we say multiple pathways for success and showing their skill set, it really brings it to we were talking about in elementary school, and then how that transfers to middle school and high school. So that's why it matters. And that kind of lends itself and bled right into, how does this promote diversity, equity, and inclusion? Outside of taking, it was mentioned the traditional stigma of college versus everything else. Having multiple pathways allows opportunities for all of our learners. And one thing that we really touched on is it really allows all of our learners the opportunity to see themselves in pathways or careers or other settings that they may not have typically thought themselves because they couldn't see it. There's such a benefit to students really seeing themselves in these opportunities. So some of the things we talked about, what I loved about the team that I was working with is we were able to, we kept reworking. We didn't want to lose anything, but we didn't want to build something that was so big it was incredibly difficult to accomplish. So instead, we just kept revisiting 3 areas: cultural experiences, multiple pathways, and then learning opportunities and course offerings. And we kept moving things around into those 3 domains to really see, to have this take sort of vision, take life itself. Some of the things we talked about are, student cultural celebrations, school partnerships, early visibility to languages in elementary school. When you talk about multiple pathways, parent surveys for careers and internships, career days in all schools, developing internships, civic and community service school-wide was a very big conversation for the group. Things like career exposure, but through the grades, not just in high school. And then for learning our opportunities, kind of similar to what Anthony had said, we talked about course offerings. We also talked about how we organize our students. One of the articles in some of the work that we were doing on Friday talked about houses and how you can use that to sort of help provide some of these experiences to students. And then the notion of having our elementary students have their toes in the sand, meaning they get to experience everything in elementary school. That's where we're really wide. And then we continue to narrow that down as they go through middle school and then high school. There's a lot more on here. I'm very excited to be part of this team. So I'm very much looking forward to see where this work goes.
Thank you, Christina. And thank you so much, when you clearly aren't feeling too well, for sharing your excitement and your enthusiasm. Our third presenter is Ann Wilkins-Leach around clear and targeted communication. So we're moving from the first theme. You probably noticed some similarities there of how we're going to build the well-rounded learners. And those 2 teams are going to work very closely together. And you'll notice there'll be some similarities between what Ann shares and what I'm going to share as well. But Ann, I'll pass it over to you in terms of clear and targeted communications.
Okay, hi everybody. As I was preparing for this evening, one word kept popping out over and over again, and that word is all. And I'm going to just do a quick little definition of what we as a group spoke about. We said all members need to be engaged in the education of our students. And by all, we mean the staff, the parents, the students, and the community. Again, we said all staff, parents, community need to be engaged and feel welcomed. And that was a big piece of our conversation. Another one was all members of the community need to feel included, engaged, and heard. And that will be spoken about a little bit when we get to the hows of this. But the whys, everyone deserves a voice. And we spoke about that at length. Communication is the cornerstone of all of this. And I think you'll all agree with that. We need to build, and not that we don't have it, but strengthen trust, efficiency, safety, and productivity. Communication facilitates engagement, and that's important here. Communication from the community needs to be welcomed, accepted, and responded to in a timely and a fair manner. Now, all of these things are kind of brief, but it took up a long part of our get together as a small committee, which again had teachers and parents, and it was a good group. How? Now, this is something that we need to keep in mind, that this is a work in progress. This isn't something that we can answer immediately. This is something we need to work together to really decide, how are we going to do this? How is everyone in our community going to feel communicated with? And when we spoke about this, we spoke about there's a huge number of folks that don't have kids. And how are they going to feel engaged? So we need to ensure that everyone has a voice. How we do that is still something that we're discussing and trying to figure out. We need opportunities for engagement. How are we going to do that? There's a lot of ways to mention and suggest, but how can we actually make it happen? We also have folks that don't have computers yet. They don't have email yet. Some folks want direct mail. Some folks say, look, I've got enough stuff coming in my mailbox. I don't want any more. So how are we going to make this happen? Again, it's a work in progress. We're going to continue. We need to make sure that student events get out. And some districts that I've been involved in, we see senior citizens walking into student concerts, and they're not going to see grandchildren or children. They're going because they read it at the train station or they read it in the grocery store. So that's important that we continue to communicate and get the word out there and get everybody excited about Hen Hud, not just the folks that are really involved.
Thank you, Anne. So our last pillar that I'm going to share on behalf of Rhiannon is shared decision-making. So what the group heard from stakeholders is that the entire Hendrick Hudson community needs to have a mutually respectful and trusting relationship so that all stakeholders can work collaboratively to meet the needs of all students. So quite a bit of what you heard in what Anne shared about trust and about thinking about ways that the community, that staff, that students can feel like their voice is being heard, their input is being heard, and can feel that they have a seat at the table. I really firmly believe that this strategic planning process is a shared decision-making process. So hopefully the community is already starting to see that and feel that a little bit, but I'll talk a little bit more about how the community is thinking about going about this. So when we have a success in this in the future, we're hoping that there's collaboration, there's cohesion, that we're working towards a common goal, and that all stakeholders feel invested in supporting the school district. So this matters, and it's very obviously connected to diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially for historically marginalized communities who haven't often had a seat at the table to have this opportunity to be a part of decision-making. Is that really clear connection to me? And then in terms of specific initiatives or ideas, Anne mentioned a couple that I think the two groups are going to talk more about, which team is going to flesh out some more, but like a community ambassador program is an idea that they had. They are thinking about ways that the website could be upgraded or redesigned to make it more user-friendly and make the information feel as accessible as possible. They mentioned potentially doing some kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion training for staff and for the community. And then in general, they mentioned that they need to do a little bit more to define what the decision-making process is and how they would want to be involved. But as well, they mentioned having leaders to be additionally involved in the community and bringing them to the table in those decisions. So that's the fourth pillar. And so the last thing that I'll share before we get to Q&A is a little bit about what's happening next. As we mentioned, these teams just kicked off. They, over the month of April, are going to be continuing to meet on their time when they are most available. And they're also going to be thinking about ways in their respective areas to reach out to the community. So you may be seeing more in terms of surveys or focus groups or other experiences to be able to share your input or your ideas about how we can achieve some of these goals. If you have an amazing idea for one of these, we would love to hear it. And so at the end of April, we will be compiling those ideas, they're creating what are called project canvases. And our steering team is going to be reviewing those and starting to think about prioritizing those and getting those onto a timeline for what we will implement and can go into the final plan. So with that, I believe we're at Q&A. Thank you again so much to my fellow presenters for sharing. Your passion about this topic is so evident, and the amount that you care about making these changes is so important.
I'd like to thank everybody for participating tonight and for participating in the strategic planning process. It is a really great way to bring the community into the decision-making process, and a very important thing to do. This will be my third strategic planning process that I've been involved in, and I really like that the touch that education elements has brought into it. So does anybody have any questions? Jen?
People still want to get involved, how can they, is there still opportunities?
Yes, we can always take people. The advising team, you could email my colleague Ronnie at edelements.com, RANI, and he can get you straight on the advising team. I'm sure the planning teams even would welcome, if one of these topics is interesting to you, we can think about how you can give feedback, as well as each of the teams, as I mentioned, is going to be thinking about ways to get out there and to think about community engagement. Do any of the presenters, do you all have anything coming up that you've already been thinking about, or your team's not there yet?
We're in the process of putting a meeting together, but we haven't done that yet.
We have a scheduled meeting for after the break. I think it's on the 19th. We met this week on Monday from 7 to 8. We're going to meet again after the break and continue the work we're doing.
We have a meeting scheduled on Friday as a team, and then we're going to sort of delegate how we can maybe get some information out, taking advantage of spring break and such.
Awesome. So I guess that's stay tuned for more as the teams decide on the questions and the things that they're needing input on.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I want to make a comment. Dana had invited Margaret and I to participate in some conversations with other districts who are at different points in their strategic planning process. And we talked about our experience since we're at the beginning part of the process, but we participated in other Zooms with districts from across the country. And the one this afternoon, it was interesting. There were superintendents and board members asking questions, and a school district that presented that I think Dana's in their second year, maybe second or third year. Their work is not done. You know, they're still adding initiatives that have come up. I'm sure since the pandemic, they have an opportunity or they have a mechanism for planned abandonment on certain initiatives that are no longer relevant or goals that they met or attained. So as much as we have a timeline to finish this work and present a plan, that plan by design has to have some level of elasticity to it so that we can continue to adapt and adjust to needs that come up and address unforeseen circumstances. And it was really revealing to hear that today, because when you think you're done with your plan, you're really not. It's probably when you have to continue to ask questions, and education elements will be part of that process to allow us to continue to engage with the community on those initiatives. And that was really important to hear.
So when you say that, what does it look like? You mean like, so we provide the plan to the community in June, like our initial plan, and then what is it, 6 months later, 8 months later, we have another follow-up meeting, kind of check and adjust, see where we are?
Yeah, I'll let Dana answer that. So Dana, you know, once we identify our pillars and initiatives and we kick the work off, what does success look like, and how are we measuring that, and what role will these groups or part of these groups play in terms of providing checks and balances?
Yes. We believe that these teams should not go anywhere, that the steering team would continue to meet the planning teams as they are able, or they might cycle members in and out. And so for the steering team, for example, we recommend that they meet at least twice yearly for about a day to talk about what you just shared, to look at the measures of success and the impact, to think about what did we say we were going to do? Did we do what we said we were going to do? And did it have the impact that we were hoping that it would have? We call those retrospectives. And then for the planning teams, we recommend that they continue to meet. Often they'll meet quarterly, and we do support our districts in doing that, to talk about the implementation of the initiatives, to think about if there's any different ideas that come about. Do we need to pivot? Do we need to think about some different ideas? How are we going to continue to engage our stakeholders? Because just because we engage them at the beginning of the plan, we have to continue to hear, is what we're trying working, or should we be trying something different? So both qualitative and quantitative measures of success that we'll set out with both the planning and the steering teams before we publish the final plan this June.
More dates for the calendar.
More dates for the calendar, yes. Anybody else have any questions? All right, thank you so much for joining us again, and we'll see you soon. All right, that brings us to our second presentation, which is our final budget review.
Hello, everyone. This is our final review. We have 2 more weeks to make changes. In 2 weeks, we go for our final budget that we'll present to the community during the 3rd Tuesday of May. So, as always, I want you to please enjoy the art. That's the only enjoyable part of this presentation, so please enjoy it. But let's start with the presentation. In the past, board members asked me to show them largest increases and decreases by category. Our largest increase by category by dollar number are benefits. Benefits include teachers' retirement system, employee retirement systems, worker comp, benefits based on our union contracts, and health insurance. Our health insurance for next year is going to increase 8%. So most of the 4.9% increase is because of our health insurance. Obviously, TRS is increasing also for 2 reasons. Number one, because we gave a raise to the teachers, and it's based on the salary of the teachers. And number 2, because the actual contribution is increasing from around 9.46% to 10.29%. So we have an increase of 4.9%. Then instructional salaries, we have an increase of only 1.5%, even though we have an increase in the teacher salaries, and that's because we're going to have about 12 teachers less next year than we have this year. And also because we have several retirements for next year. Transportation, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago, we have higher gas, higher diesel, higher cost in general, spare parts, and I'm taking also into account an increase in the union contract. Co-curriculum and athletic salaries is also an increase due to the increase in our union contract with the teachers. And then debt and capital, like we've been discussing, we will continue to discuss in the next year. Our debt is maturing, so we have less capital and interest to pay in our debt. Next, please. Bill wanted to see by account code our largest increases and decreases. Here you have them. Like I said, health insurance was our largest increase by $1 million because it increased 8%. Teacher retirement will increase 7.48. Social Security will increase because of the increase in salaries in our teachers and the rest of the staff. Then our computer, our director of technology this year, we didn't have in our budget from last year a director of technology. Now we have a director of technology and we need to add it. Also, a couple of weeks ago, Benita presented her budget and told us why she needed more money, so it's here. Capital project, like we discussed, we're adding $150,000 for the auditorium in TV. And finally, last year we didn't have teachers in pre-K, and now we added to the teachers in pre-K. This number should be higher, but I didn't know that we already had the people who are going to be our pre-K teachers, so that number should increase a little bit compared to this one. Next, please. And here we have the largest increases. One of them again is transfer to capital funds, meaning transfers to pay debt and interest. On distributed employee benefits, this is mainly because some of the unions we negotiated and we took away their benefit trusts and increased their salaries. Employee retirement, it's going down for us because we finished paying a loan that we got from 2010. And the rest are just small changes. Tuition other public schools, it's $100,000 less. Probably students are moving back to our own programs or are moving to both. Or next, please. So in January 20, we started our budget. Back then, we said that our budget will be around $86.6 million compared to $84 million last year. Now, our budget that we're proposing is $86.6 million. That's a $2.33 million increase, which represents a 2.8%. That's compared to 2.7% increase from the January 20 meeting. Our tax levy, I'm proposing a reduction of about $800,000 compared to January 20, and that will be a 3.2% increase in the tax levy compared to 4.9% that we were proposing back in January. The CAP information is really not very meaningful for us because of the Indian Point pilot. Every dollar that we lose in pilot payments, we can add it to the CAP. So this year, for example, the New York State cap is 2%. For us, our cap is 15.2%. And since we would never impose a 15.2% increase in the tax levy, it's still important for everyone to know what our tax cap is. This year, our tax cap is $61 million compared to last year of 53, which is a difference of $8 million. So we could have increased our budget by $8 million and still only needed 50% of yes votes to pass the budget. Next. Here you have the main revenues that we have. State aid is increasing 33%. BOCES say that it's mainly based on how much we spend in BOCES. It's increasing 17%. Other income is an increase of close to 30%, and that's mainly because of Lisa and her programs in special ed. All this is tuition money coming from other districts. Sales tax, basically, I'm saying it's staying the same. Transfers is money that we get paid by the school lunch for Claire's salary and other expenses. And then our fund balance is increasing to $3.5 million. This year so far, we've been doing well, so I feel confident that we can add additional fund balance and be able to reduce the tax levy. And finally, our pilots continue to decrease due to the pilots from today Holtec. The pilot from Holtec will be reduced. And then, on the other hand, our cessation fund money will increase 83%. So that represents a non-property tax revenue increase of 2.1%. The budget, $86.6 million. The tax levy, $50 million. The only part that is new in this presentation is the contingent budget. Unfortunately, if we have to go to contingent budget, we will have to cut $1.5 million out of this budget. So these next graphs are basically history. I just wanted to show the community and the board for the last 7-8 years how we have done compared to the state of New York in the tax cap, the tax levy, and if you can see up until the moment that Indian Point closed, we were always bringing tax levies that were either zero or negatives. But unfortunately, due to the reduction of pilots, now it's moving the other direction. Next, please. Here, I'm showing you the revenues that I showed you before, but these revenues, you can see them on the pie chart. And then finally, by law, I need to show you government accounting. It's divided in 3: administrative budget, capital budget, and instructional budget. The instructional budget represents 82%, and we've always tried to have our instructional budget to be more than 80%. Are there any questions or comments? Sure.
So looking at the preliminary budget that presented back in January and the one tonight, so the budget dollar-wise actually goes up, what is that, $33,000, but our tax levy is going down. How is that possible?
for two reasons. If you remember, back in January, we still didn't have our state aid numbers. And our state aid numbers came way higher than expected, like for most of the other school districts in the state. The state increased the total state aid by about 10%. So there you have an increase in state aid, and originally the fund balance was going to be a lot less than it is today. And given the fact that we're doing well this year, I felt comfortable in adding about $700,000 more in fund balance for next year.
And by adding money adding money for the fund balance, it will not change your long-term predictions of what our tax increases might be, right?
Right, because this $700,000 is because this year we've been doing well in the fund balance. So I'm expecting this year to have a fund balance of about $3 million, and I project every year a fund balance of $2 million. So we're about hopefully $1 million ahead, and we'll stay that way.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Enrique. Okay, so that brings us to our first audience comment section on agenda items. Carmen, do we have anybody speaking on agenda items this evening? Okay, so for the speakers, each speaker should sign in with the district clerk prior to commenting. When called, each speaker should step up to the podium, state their name and affiliation if applicable prior to starting their comments. Letters, petitions, or other written material should be handed to the district clerk. Each speaker is permitted 3 minutes for their comments and must be recognized by the board president. All comments must be directed to the board. The board will listen to comments but will not necessarily debate or discuss items. Operational matters will be directed to school administrators for handling. The board is not permitted to address personnel or individual student matters in open session. The board may limit repetitive comments in order to give time to others wishing to speak, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. And the board expects comments to be made without interference from the audience in a civil manner, please. And we have the first speaker. First and only. There's an audience at home.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Hickey. I just had 2 quick comments. One was about the Princeton plan and busing. I was wondering if you gave any thought to the parents that drop their children off. I don't know if you know what the line is like in the morning. My son gets dropped off. All fairness, he won't next year. He'll be in middle school. But I do know some rumblings in the community that people are planning on dropping off next year instead of taking the bus. They're unhappy about bus stops, the duration of the trip. So if you have more people dropping off next year, you might want to think about that, because it is a long line in the morning. There's a lot of traffic, and you'll have kids getting to school late. My second question really is for you, Margaret. I'm super happy about universal pre-K. I think it's very exciting.
So comments have to be directed towards the board, but that's fine. You can still talk about pre-K.
The person who brought universal pre-K, I'm so happy for. I just was a little bit unclear because I've been doing some research. In other districts, they sub out the staffing for universal pre-K. And I was wondering if we could serve more kids if we did that. I mean, I don't know if that's possible, but I'm still waiting on FOIL requests from Nanuet School District and 2 other ones in North Rockland and another one in Rockland County. They sub out the positions for universal pre-K. They're not district employees, because the average pre-K teacher makes less than $30,000 a year. Your 2 teachers' salaries for universal pre-K are $300,000 a year. That's going to give you a cost per pupil of $10,000 for pre-K. So if we kind of cut the cost there, could we expand it to more community members? Because there's a big need and it offsets costs long-term because they won't need services in kindergarten, which you know.
Can I just clarify something? By subbing out, do you mean subbing?
They're not
substitute
district employees.
Teachers on the premises? Or
They're not
subbing
district
out
employees
to-
in other districts. So you're not paying the benefits package for them, which is a big cost. I think it's probably about $27,000 per staff member for your benefits package. So in other districts, your universal pre-K positions are not district employees.
But you're talking about having the program on premises.
In some districts, it's still on premises. In some districts, it's off. Either way, they're not district employees.
All right, thank you for the
Just a
clarification.
taxpayer savings.
And that was our only speaker for this evening. Thank you very much. That brings us to our committee reports.
Mine's brief, and it's a topic we already touched on, but I promised the FGL PTA last night that I would bring forward their concerns about transportation. It was a pretty lengthy discussion. The parents were very upset, and it actually was not particularly about duration. It's really about safety. A lot of the people that attended the FGL PTA last night were part of, meetings from the past, and the one thing that they felt that they were promised was no jeopardy, no safety concerns or changes, no crossing double yellow lines, and so on and so forth. And then I asked their permission to bring it forward because they were talking about it for a while. And I just wanted to make sure that, my fellow trustees and that the administration knew that there was much parent discussion last night about safety concerns at the elementary level due to busing.
All right, thank you. Did you talk to the PTA about having them contact the transportation department to check those spots out to make sure that they are safe for the kids?
So I actually didn't have to. They kind of gave each other that feedback. I think Liz was on vacation a couple of days, so some people were waiting to hear back. I'm sure that they will. Yeah.
Okay, great. Excuse me.
So the facilities committee met as well, and we were discussing the ways that we could allocate more money towards our facilities. We've been hearing from the community again that there's a great need, and we've noticed a great need as well, of course. So we were trying to find ways that we could allocate more money towards that. And I know Joe had some things that he was going to say with regard to that.
And then we were also, so it was about allocating money for repairs, right? And then, right, and then, so right, not upgrades, it's real, or not something new, it's repairing the services, we just need to make sure we are clear on that. And then also creating like a document that contained all of the items that facilities we want to complete. And so that way we can kind of keep an ongoing check mark of where we are, what's out there at each school, and how we're going to prioritize the work, so that when we look at it as a committee, we're not each seeing just our own little piece. We each kind of have a much bigger picture, and yearly annual school visits, making sure that we get back to that now that COVID is hopefully behind us. We want to organize that with you and Anthony as far as.
Yeah, one of the reserves that school districts are entitled to have under law is a repair reserve. It's exactly that. It's a dedicated, basically savings account that a district can allocate dollars to for reserves that sometimes are either an emergency or a need that arises that needs to be funded outside of the general budget. And we have that opportunity. We have a repair reserve, and we do have money in it for emergencies and rainy days. So we could certainly identify priority order what some additional repairs could be in addition to what Mr. Merlini and his team of custodians and technical specialists can do. what we would need to do is we need to identify that work and basically not to exceed number. And the public would have to, the board would have to approve it after a public hearing. Public hearing is basically a short opportunity at a board meeting to present our plan and for the public to weigh in on it. No different than when we do our code of conduct or safety plan, or last year when we decided to amend the policy and move toward the Princeton plan, we had a public hearing. So it's the same opportunity. We would hear from the public. They would say more of this, less of that, yay, nay, what have you. And then ultimately the board would pass a resolution, and that would essentially give Enrique the permission to move money from one account to another so we can execute that plan. So we can certainly go back and identify what those priorities are, look at the balance of the reserves, and then come back to the board with a dollar amount that we feel comfortable with, what those expenses would entail, and what those repairs would yield in terms of improvements, and then identify a date for public hearing, and then ultimately for the board to approve it. And that would basically release the funds to start the work and put that in.
How do you, so when you probably don't frequently need to use those funds, how do you then replenish them moving forward?
At the end of the year, I'll let Enrique talk about this. You just mentioned fund balance. We have the opportunity to designate unspent budgeted money to various sources. One can be a designated fund balance, which this would be. Undesignated fund balance is basically your general savings account at the end of the year. So there is a mechanism to move dollars in.
So we actively monitor that. So if we tap into it, we'll then replenish to make sure that it's always
We have the
there.
opportunity to replenish it. Enrique just said maybe we will, knock on wood, have $3 million of reserves at the end of the year. We can determine where those $3 million go, and repair reserve could be one, so we replenish it. Correct.
Thank you.
I think that was everything that we discussed.
I don't know, any updates on the buildings, though, the repairs, I mean, the work that's currently being done, like with the high school auditorium, high school auditorium, I cannot talk, we're in the cafeteria.
I know we asked.
Yeah.
The last I heard was that the lighting would, the goal was for having lighting done, and that everything was in, and they were in the building last week. They started that work. I know we were looking to get an update from Anthony to see if it was complete. He was expecting it to be complete now, like right before spring break. We did confirm that we would not have the cable for the audio visual. That would not be in, but plans have already been made, and Claire and her group are in line. They have a vendor that they are renting the equipment from to support the play that will happen later this year. And everyone's in line for that. And her crew will get to use that equipment. So it won't just, they'll actually get trained and they'll have use of it, is my understanding.
Exciting to finally be able to use the auditorium.
Yeah.
So, I spoke with Anthony, it's complete. They completed it yesterday morning. Claire went and she was very happy. So Claire is, during the next 10 days, is going to play with the lights and everything. And then the following week, the company is going to come and teach her how to use all the different equipment for the lights. So that's done, and she just wants to practice herself. And then I think Tuesday when we come back, the company is coming to teach her everything that she needs to know for the night.
Great, and the high school students are putting on the Addams Family this year. Tickets are going on sale soon, so keep your eye out for those. It should be nice to see them.
Okay.
So I was gonna report out on the community forums that we held over the past month. Trustees met with 31 community members over 11 different sessions last month. People came to us with questions, concerns, positive feedback, and ideas for improvement. As trustees, we thought it was a great way to connect with our community and got that same feedback from the community. This was something that they were looking for, and we really do want to continue it moving forward. We got some feedback that maybe smaller groups or longer sessions might work. So as we tweak it in the future, we can look forward to those changes. Many of the comments were aligned to the ongoing strategic planning initiatives, and we'll make sure that those comments and ideas get passed on to the 4 pillars. Other comments seem to be appropriate for either a Board of Ed meeting presentation, perhaps another community forum where specific themes could be addressed. And then some have already been addressed, and as I go through them, you'll see we're already taking action on some items. I just wanted to remind the community that the Board of Education, we're an oversight community, and Carol has this metaphor of the forest fire, and so we, as the trustees, are in the helicopter over the forest fire, and we're trying to locate where the fires are, what the themes are in our community, and then pass them on to the administrators so they can handle the specific operational issues.
Yep.
Okay. So some of the stuff we heard was operational, and community members should always reach out to an appropriate admin. If you have a question about Princeton plan, contact one of the elementary school principals. If you have a question about the budget, reach out to Joe or Enrique. So, but here I'm going to go through some of the themes that we heard, some of the next steps that we're planning as a board. And if you guys feel like I'm missing anything, please jump in.
You can also use the Just Ask button on the website if you don't know who to contact about your operational issues.
You're right. So this is a good example of how we're already working on the issue of community cohesion through the strategic plan. We heard that we want to move forward as a one hen hut community, and people shared great ideas with us from anything like a whole district event where we can get community members involved to standardizing our communications so that everyone writes an email the same way. So parents and community members know that it's coming from a hen hut member, community member, a staff member. There were questions about Indian Point and the gas line safety, BV safety in particular. People were looking for an update to ensure that we have up-to-date building level safety plans and the appropriate professional development time for staff to learn and practice them. Others were looking for assurances that we have done everything we can to keep our students and staff safe in a worst case scenario. This is probably an opportunity for a community forum. There was enough interest from the community members that we met that I think we need to plan a district-specific Indian Point community forum where people can come with their concerns and questions. The next theme was under curriculum, and so whether we were going to have kinder camp this summer and whether there were similar programs for students in 1st through 12th grades for anyone who maybe was having COVID related learning loss. And we talked about that already tonight, where we are having kinder camp. We have identified the extended, what is it called? Extended year. Thank you. Extended school year. So yes, that is, we heard you on that, and we're already taking, we hope that you have taken the steps, and then if you didn't get the information you were looking for tonight, to reach out to Dr. Roller or Joe, and we can get you more information. Parents looking for clear curriculum information for each grade. And I didn't know this, but I just found out today that the K-5 curriculum information is already on the district website. It's under departments and then curriculum and instructions under that tab. So for K-5, that info is there, and we can work on getting it up to date for middle and high schools. Parents are looking forward to having metrics about their specific students so they can monitor progress. So whether that's an iReady score, there was a question about beyond just the move to the Princeton plan and having more equitable distribution of students among classes, what also is being done to help students with historically low test scores. And parents are looking to understand when and why changes are made to the curriculum. We're sharing that feedback with Dr. Ruler, and these are some of the themes that are the strategic plan that's working on as far as our academic and real world experiences. Parents had the idea of they suggested incorporating the curriculum details in the fall Meet the Teacher events, like we used to do pre-COVID, or there's enough interest, maybe we could do a specific curriculum night with Dr. Ruler, people who wanted to. Onto budget. We heard a lot about how we can prioritize building maintenance in our budget. Staff and students want to be safe, and they want to be proud of their schools. So we just talked a little bit about the repairs in the short term, and we can also start to begin to look at with the facilities committee, maybe a long-term plan of how we prioritize the budget as far as building maintenance and improvements. And then the other theme was how we balance tax increases with maintaining our current offering of high quality educational opportunities. It's a delicate balance of we want to have these high quality programs, we have to temper them with a tax increase that will be acceptable. We had great ideas. People shared an idea of a high school program that has low enrollment. Could we share a teacher with another high school or with BOCES? And then other people suggested that we carefully consider the cost benefits of new academic programs at this time. So things to think forward as we move forward into next year, or it's the budget season for this year is coming to a close, but things that we need to just keep mindful of. I wanted to remind the community that specific budget questions, there's going to be a budget hearing on May 4th. You can always reach out to Joe or Enrique with a budget question, and we're going to hold, like we did last year, an online budget forum with members of the finance committee, so you could ask questions if you have questions about the budget that we're presenting for this coming year.
I think Joe actually has a little bit more information on that particular item.
Okay.
Yeah, we're looking at our calendars, and by the end of the week, we'll announce various basically budget roundtables as we have in the past. We used to go to Dunkin' Donuts around this time of year and talk budget, but we're working with the Hendrick Hudson Free Library to have a number of in-person meetings and then some virtual ones as well.
Thank you. 3 more things. I'm almost done. There was a lot of information. I tried to whittle it down. Princeton plan. The most common comment that we heard were parents looking for forums with the elementary principals. So those are coming. Those dates and times have been announced. Parents do want to bring all 3 principals together. We don't have a plan for that yet, but we're working on it. We're trying to figure out how to, as we build a one HED community, what are the options and how we can bring all 3 elementary school principals together. So we will have more information on that as we explore those options. And then as far as specifics under Princeton plan, people are looking for the board and our administrators to identify and share our metrics for success. Explaining how student progress will be documented and shared between buildings, and making sure our teachers have enough time to pack up and set up rooms without detracting from teaching time or other critical professional development that happens every year. So some of those are operational issues that we've shared with the team, and some of those will be board goals that we articulate over the summer at our board retreat. Next up is communications. There was a lot of suggestions on communications, and I will follow up with the 2 pillars that are on the strategic planning. Some comments that came out of it was revamping the district website and to consider alternate methods of communication beyond just email to ensure that all community members are getting the information. Another idea was, again, a standardized communication format from all district employees, especially with Princeton Plan next year. We want to make sure that parents are getting regular information from all schools. Another parent suggested professional development for all staff or hiring a communication specialist that could help us articulate best practices for these moving forward. One thing that I heard was how we balance getting too much information. So your inbox just gets overwhelmed and you just start to shut down versus we're not handing out information in a timely or critical information that we're not sending out. So I think with the strategic planning, those are going to be huge obstacles to overcome of how to find that balance to give parents critical, timely information without overwhelming them. The last theme was feedback about the board and our meeting format. The public comment section of our meetings are frustrating to some because of the limitations of open meeting law and NISBA best practice recommendations. This can lead to community members not feeling heard, valued, or respected. So I wanted to ask Carol to go over why we do it this way, and hopefully that could help. We heard this a lot, so hopefully people can understand.
And we hear this a lot, and we hear it time and time again, year after year. So the Board of Education meetings are actually legally required meetings of a corporate body that oversees the operations of the school. It is bound by open meeting law, by education law, confidentiality statutes, and does have a structure to it. It is actually a formal meeting. It's a meeting that the public is invited to watch so that they can see their government in action. It is not designed to be a meeting that the public is engaged in. And part of the reason for that is if you engage in dialogue with someone from the public, you're basically making them an ex officio member of the board for that time. And that brings up questions of why that particular person is contributing to the conversation, what their qualifications are, why can't everybody do that? So it makes it a little unsustainable for the future. And you certainly don't want to play favorites for one person's viewpoint or groups versus another. The power of the board is in the decision making of all 7 people, not just one person. The open meetings law does have some strong instructions in order to protect the public's interests along these lines. So if we as board members are out in the public, if we're at a social event, if we're talking to members of the audience here, you can't have more than 3 board members together, because if you have 4, then you have an unofficial board meeting, and that board meeting should have been noticed to the public, and the public should be able to view that meeting. So even if we're at a party or a social event, we can't talk about school board issues with more than 3 people together. That's one of the reasons we only have 3 trustees at our outreach meetings. That is also why we can't have trustees sharing emails, or you can't get responses from multiple trustees, because that communication follows through to digital communication as well. So emails, texts, things like that. The board president is tasked with communicating with the public so that you don't get into that problem where you inadvertently have an unofficial board meeting, which again should be noticed to the public so that they can view it. It counts, even if it is an email, even if it is a serial email where one person asks each board member the same question and each board member responds. That technically is still considered a meeting in open meetings law. So it makes it very cumbersome. We do have to follow a lot of guidelines. And it's frustrating not only for the public, I think, but oftentimes for us as well. It doesn't feel comfortable to just say thank you for your comment. We do take all of those comments into consideration. It does play into our discussions. We do try to have superintendent's updates or other updates at subsequent board meetings to kind of follow up on those issues. And I think that these meetings that we've had recently, the community outreach meetings, worked out really well. They worked out much better than our Dunkin' Donuts meet and greets did the past few years. We had way more participation. It was really nice, and I hope you guys will, you're intending to continue them going forward. So, as board president, I would like to thank you for your input. I'm sorry I'm the only one you hear from on your email communications. Those emails are shared with the rest of the board. Everybody does read their emails very carefully, and they do think about what you've said. I think I covered everything.
Thank you for articulating that. So that was the best I could do I had like 7 pages of single space comments. So I tried to pull out the key themes and some action items. Does anybody have anything else that you didn't hear that maybe you had to take away from the forum?
Thanks for doing that work, Abby. I'm sure that was not easy. The one thing that I have to highlight, and it's, I say to myself, take away the role of being a young mom and be a board member. But the truth of the matter is the community, I think, voted for me because of that. And the one thing that really stuck out to me about Princeton Plan and all of these conversations that we had was that we have the most amazing parents with so much heart, with so much expertise, with so much knowledge. And I don't think that we've tapped into it, not even a little bit. I think shame on us for that. And I really, really think that we need to come back to the community with plans on how we plan to involve the parents, really involved, right? And also we have these amazing community members and parents that are also teaching in Princeton Plan schools who should have been, involved for the last year, and shame on us for not doing that, right? So how can we figure out how to utilize these resources, these free resources that are right in front of us, that are begging for our acknowledgement? So I want to make sure that we highlight that and that we do something great with that.
Thank you. And that's fantastic for the pillar number 4 of our strategic plan, shared decision making. So yeah, I mean, strategic plan is one way that all of those parents, all of those people can get involved, and all of us here at the board were very involved parents, and that's how we ended up on the board, right? We were either involved in PTA or in strategic planning or in other ways. So I think all of us feel that same way, that we want to have the parents connected to our district and to their classrooms and to their child's education so that they can be a contributor. So thanks for highlighting that. Anybody else comments? Anything else you want to highlight from these discussions?
So where do we go from here? How do you feel? Like, I mean, this is a great report out. What do you think as a board, what do we think our next steps are? Do we think?
So I think this information, some of it needs to get to the strategic plan working groups, because some of the specific ideas might be helpful as they're working on their goals and their initiatives. Like I said, whether it was Indian Point or maybe curriculum, I think there was enough interest that we need to have a forum where people can ask questions, share their concerns. Looking at,
and I guess, sorry. Go ahead. Maybe after the initial the principal ones, maybe we'll have to come back and see what the next one might be. I mean, we know we talked about parents with multiple elementary school students.
Yes, we heard that. That was definitely allowed. We heard that. We just haven't figured out what the next step is. So these initial meetings with the 3 principals, building specific, are on the calendar. And so yes, the next step is how can we create this this kind of meeting that parents are looking for.
How do you feel about at least those 2 for a start, Joe? Like something with safety around Indian Point and then some sort of follow-up after the 3 principals?
In terms of Indian Point, there's a school working group that is part of the task force. There's a group of graduate students that are doing an assessment to advise us on potential opportunities to strengthen safety and security measures from monitoring air quality, water, soil, and you name it. So I think we want to hear from them first, because the government, state government has allocated $500,000 for us for some sort of improvements. We also need to see what the next meeting of the task force is in the spring in terms of the technical experts that are on that task force that were identified by the state. And they have offered their services to us to assist us. I know there's some tension between what a group of parents believe decommissioning should look like at Indian Point and what the experts doing decommissioning suggest or what science tells them. I think we have to connect those families with questions with those folks. I think what has happened is we have been inadvertently put in the middle to do something that is completely out of our core competency, to be honest. But that's just a nature of the deliberations that, now the school board is the most local form of government, and folks are looking at the school board to do something when you have sort of a difference of opinion between what families want to see and what the professionals in the field are suggesting. So I don't know how much, going back to one of your examples, I don't know how much of it is a forum of or by the Board of Education of the district, or connecting parents to members of the task force that are responsible for implementing, or should I say implementing, decommissioning, demolishing the plan as safely as possible. And that's been a real frustration for me, and I know some of you folks feel it over the last number of years. We didn't ask for any of this, and now we're in the middle of trying to negotiate what is safety and what is not. So I think we start with that group doing the study. We go back to the technical experts, and we try to make them available to our school community.
The other thing I want to say is, I'm not being glib by saying we should pass this to the strategic planning committees, because they're doing a tremendous amount of work. And our intention is not to make this a document that's going to sit on the shelf and say, all right, we talked about strategic plan and came up with these ideas, and that's lovely. It's going to be a working document, and there should be check marks and, actions from that plan as well. So a lot of these things that we're hearing from community members hopefully will be accomplished that way. It's a tremendous amount of work. There are a lot of people working to pull up the community's input together on that as well. So I encouraged a couple of people at these community outreach meetings to join strategic plan and to share their ideas. And even if they couldn't participate in meetings, we would put their ideas forward as well, so that the strategic planning committees were aware of them.
And I want to go back to a comment about parents. We met with the elementary PTA group yesterday or the day before, as they are reorganizing. And they are committed to a model where there will be one PTA, an umbrella PTA K through 5, but there will be sort of a subgroup in each of the 3 schools, and that they have an interest in meeting as a group with the 3 elementary principals to start connecting some parent interests with what they could support. But we want to get through, I think, Jen, so you said, get through the first round of school-specific meetings to take care of the Maslow hierarchy of needs. When does the bus come? When will my child have lunch and recess and those sort of things, and then start getting to some more specific parent engagement. We have parents who are asking Cindy Kramer, the principal at Frank G, what will the first day look like? I want to be there for my kindergartner, and that's great energy and enthusiasm, but we've got to let's get through the schedule and some other stuff first, and revisit that. So what's great to hear is that there's cohesion between parents wanting to be involved, the principals saying we're just not there yet, and PTA being the one that can help make that happen.
I guess we'll internally have to just decide when we'll do this again.
Right, so you want action steps. Well, we're already scheduling our next community outreach meetings, right? Which is the budget outreach meetings, question and answer. And I'm not going to be here next year, so you guys will have to decide how we handle it next year, whether this is going to be quarterly roundtables or once or twice a year or whatever. But it seems like everybody on the board really enjoyed having the outreach meetings. They certainly were a lot more fulfilling because people showed up for them. My experience with the Dunkin' Donuts meet and greets, as we've heard before, is maybe one person might show up and they just happen to be coming in to pick up coffee because they're on the way to the kids' game. And it was really unsatisfying for us as board trustees and also unsatisfying for the public. So I think letting people sign up ahead of time, all those ideas you guys had for having, you know, set meeting times in the evenings, the daytime, virtual, all of that, even though it felt more formal, it worked out much better than our informal stop by and say hi kind of things. And just to remind people, you know, we're at these board meetings, you know when the board meetings are, they're published. We try to have a few minutes before the public portion of the meeting starts to talk to people if you want to talk to us. Usually we're here for a few minutes afterwards as well, so there are less formal ways of talking to us. You can email, you can, a lot of the, like we said, the operational questions, if you don't know who to ask, use the just ask button or shoot Joe an email and he can direct you to the right person. Email your principal. That's about it. Okay, so that ends our board comments. I have one comment. I just want to remind the public that Board of Ed petitions are due in on April 18th before 5 p.m. Next week, school is on vacation, so the district office is closed. So please have your petitions in by this Friday, or you have to come in Monday the 18th before 5 and drop those off with Carmen.
And our next meeting's on a Tuesday.
And our next meeting is on Tuesday, April 19th at the Hendrick Hudson Free Library. You'll be able to view the lovely art show there as well, which is ongoing as of now. So if you wanted to go beforehand, you could. Lisa, is Westchester Putnam School Board Association doing a orientation thing for?
Actually, I already had it. Yeah, it's on Monday night. Yeah, it happened. But hopefully people got to take advantage of that. And if not, there are plenty of resources on our district website for, there's a little spot called Running for the Board. And you can click on that. And there's links to various resources from Westput as well as New York State School Boards Association that are very, very helpful. So, yeah. And also feel free to reach out to a trustee, you know, and ask us our thoughts and our experience of being on the board.
That brings us to, wait, we didn't have any other board comments, right? Okay. That brings us to our next audience comment section on non-agenda items. I will not read the instructions again, as thinking of stuff.
I attended that Zoom meeting for the board, and you know, I do want to thank every one of you. Whether I have differences of opinions with anybody, it's a lot of work to be on the board. It's a lot of work to volunteer for this and not get paid for it, and I respect that, and I very much appreciate it. I think the confusion with the public is, although you do have to follow open meeting laws, the Board of Ed sets how the meeting runs. And that's why if you go on YouTube and you look up Garrison School District, Clarkstown School District, the meeting runs differently. But one of the things I said a couple weeks back is, there's nobody here. Audience comments should be in the beginning. You're only giving us 3 minutes to do it. If I have a kid at home, I'm not gonna come. I'm not gonna take the 3 hours and sit here to give my 3-minute comment. It's just, it's not worth it. Not having the police here, thank you, because we don't need them. Even if we have different points of view, body language is 70% of communication. So when you turn your back to me, or you're on your phone, or you roll your eyes, I don't feel welcome. I feel like you don't respect me and I'm not being heard. And I do respect everybody in here. I'm an educator, I care about kids. I'm a parent, and I'm a community member, I care about the schools. So right there, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that brings us to the end of our meeting. Can I get a motion to close the meeting, please? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye.